そこでね、思ったのはね、読めないね。
Welcome to the lazyfluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Yami.
And the topic of the day is kanji hard? Before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and to drop a review on the platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, is kanji hard? This week on the main channel, we released a video titled The Kanji Iceberg Explained. In it, I go over many aspects of kanji, as well as rant about many of my personal qualms with kanji over the years. But how do Japanese people feel about kanji? And by Japanese people, I mean IME specifically. First of all, I want to say thank you to anybody who's listening or who watched the video. The reception's been way better than I ever expected. As well as I got a shout out from a YouTuber I'm literally subscribed to. Yeah, so that's exciting. But IME, what are your general feelings about kanji? Also, if you haven't seen the main channel video, it'll probably give this podcast more context, although we'll try to do this in a way that you don't need to see it to understand what we're talking about. Ayami, do you like kanji? What do you think about kanji? Good, bad? You don't think about it? Any thoughts about kanji?
別に意見があるかないかって言われてもね、そんな、小学校からさ、漢字って習い始めるのね、日本だと。で、やらされてるからさ、普通に好き嫌いなく続けてきたから、特に意見もなく。でもやっぱり全部ひらがなだった場合に、読むのはかなりきつくなるとは思うよ。なんていうの？ひらがなだとさ、切れ目がわからないとかさ、よくあるから。でも漢字と、送り仮名のひらがなで、読まなくても見ただけで意味がわかるようになるから、その分、漢字は、存在していいのかな。存在意義はそこにあると思う。けど、それ以外で別に、ないんじゃない？
I mean, we're kind of jumping right into it. I want to talk about some aspects about kanji first. What I will say is, although I learned cursive when I was young, doesn't mean I like cursive. I don't like cursive. So you know what I'm saying? So I feel like, and I know that I talked before about a barber, like a Japanese barber that who cut my hair, who said that although obviously they learned katakana when they were a kid, they explicitly don't learn other history of other different countries because they hate reading katakana. So I don't think just because you're indoctrinated, it means that you necessarily don't have any feelings about it. For example, I'm an American. I think I complain about America on every single episode. So anyways, I guess we can, I don't know if I want to jump into tackling the whole topic of what could replace kanji if it didn't exist, but I think you know and I know that Japanese didn't start with kanji, and the first work ever written, the novel ever written was written by a woman, The Tale of Genji Monogatari, and that was written by a woman, and that was all hiragana. So at the very least we know that, at the very least we know that Japanese can exist without hiragana. I will say that as somebody who once you are indoctrinated into kanji, you feel like, oh yeah, of course it couldn't work without kanji. And even me now that I've gone through all this pain, learning kanji, I'm like, oh yeah, it makes everything easy to read. But I will say that there might be ways to do it without that. But before we go into, I think that specific discussion, I want to ask you about some concrete stuff I talked about in the video, aspects of kanji, and get your opinion on how common they are, if this is a problem you have, or if you have any problems in general. But before I ask you anything specifically, from the video, are there any things about kanji that you find that are tricky for you? There might be some stuff that you might be thinking about, but is there anything that you would say?
まずなんだろうね。この前、試験監督で、人の名前を呼んで、で、ちょっと誘導するっていう、ボランティアみたいなのがあったんだけど、そこでね、思ったのはね、読めないね。でさ、人を呼ぶときにさ、くんとかさんとか、言った方がさ、ポライトだからさ、なんとかさ、なんとかくんって言うんだけど、でも、その漢字の見た目だけで、くんかさんかマジかわかんなくて、で、くんなのにさんって言ったり、さんなのにくんって言ったりとか、あとそもそも、名字が、 読めなかったりとかね。まあ名前が読めないのは、まあよくあることなんだけど、でも、名字が読めないっていうのも、まあ起こることで、あんまり珍しいね、名字だと、ちょっと読めなかったね。で、そうね、あと困ることは、なんだろう、最近だと、もうなんだろうね、紙に漢字っていうか、まあ文章を書く機会がさ、減ってきてるじゃん。みんな全部そのパソコンだったり、まあスマホだったりで、ね、テクストを打ってる時とかもさ、そのオートコレクトされちゃうからさ、なんか、どの漢字が、まあ、正しいのかっていうのが、その自分から能動的に考える機会が減ってる気がして、で、あれこの漢字どうやって書くんだっけってみたいなことが結構あって、読めるけど書けないみたいな。っていう現象がね、まあ、起きちゃうんだよ、そうすると。だから、まあ、そこはちょっと、まあ、困るっちゃ困るね。ひらがなだったらさ、全然忘れないじゃん。けど、漢字だとさ、いろんなパターンがあるし、同じ音のさ、言葉でもさ、漢字が違うだけでニュアンスが違ったりとか、ね、するから、そこ難しいかな。日本人としては。
I will say I did actually like literally in my script. Well, I had a lot of things in my script that didn't end up making it into the video, but I actually was strongly considering putting in the fact that it was kind of a little bit too depressing. But there is a thing where even if you go through and you learn all the kanji and you learn how to write kanji, even native speakers writing it all the way through high school and college forget how to write. And now there are plenty of benefits to writing. If you're learning Japanese, you think you shouldn't be writing. We can talk about maybe the benefits a little later. I think there's still plenty of benefits to writing, even if you forget how to write. But I definitely feel like that's something a native speaker or like writer of any other non-Asian language that doesn't have kanji never suffers. Sometimes people forget how to spell, but nobody ever forgets how to write the characters that they use to spell words. You know what I'm saying? And for Japanese, I feel like that's super common. For you, I think you would probably be one of the more literate in terms of writing Japanese people, because for like med school, you need to write all the time.
いやいやいやいやそれは偏見だと思うよ。そんな書く機会はないよ。だってさ、そのテストとかもさ、まあ short answers もあるけど大体その、multiple choice とかでね、塗りつぶすだけとかだから、そんな、まあ、でもまあそうね、medical terms で。
You test all the time though, and you have to explain like, it's not like simple answer stuff. You have to use like a whole breadth of vocab and kanji and write that. What I'm saying is, if you're like computer science, right? If you're a computer science major in Japanese right now, you probably never have to touch paper. I was going to say touch grass, but that's different. And also, just on the quick little subject of, can Japanese exist without kanji? Do you use kanji when you're speaking?
Speaking は言わなくない？
Exactly. My point is, when you're speaking, the other you don't have like the jimaku and you don't have the kanji, but we're still able to understand each other, right? When you're speaking, even though I can't see your kanji, I can still understand what you're saying. So even though like I think you do like lose information, I feel, and obviously when I'm looking at you and we have context, it's a lot easier to know what you're talking about. I still think Japanese definitely can work without it. Just a quick aside. And then the names thing. One thing a lot of people were commenting on, is in the video like we released, is, oh, this is just like, these are problems that only people learning the language have. And it's a cultural difference. It's something like that. But the way I evaluate a problem with the language and not a problem, just because you didn't grow up with the language, is when I meet native speaker after native speaker who says they have a problem that does not exist in English. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And one of those names, especially keep in mind that when we're talking about names, we're not talking about my name. We're not talking about foreign names. We're talking about a language when it's hard to read the names of the people in a 99% plus homogeneous country. It's not like they're grabbing Doofenshmirtz III and you're like, oh, what's that? It's like, no. Your name can be like... Sorry, go ahead.
なんかさ、英語だとさ、まあ英語じゃなくても、まあ違う国でもいい、違う言葉でもいいけど、ネームってさ、結構、ファミリーネームとファーストネームが完全に被る場合っていうのは結構あるじゃん。だってそれだけさ、その、 ネームのバラエティがさ、少ないから。ね。だからトム・ブラウン、まあわかんないけど、誰かわかんないけど、トム・ブラウンっていう人はまあ、絶対めちゃめちゃいると思うんだよ。そのね。でも日本だと、まあ被ることはあるんだけど、まあ、名字が同じでもさ、違う、なんていうの、書き方であったり、で、名前first name に対しても、同じ音だけど違う書き方とか、同じ漢字だけど違う読み方っていうのはあるから、まあバラエティは増えるよねっていうことで、なんか、ね、同じ名前を呼んで、二人の人が同時に返事する確率は減る。それがいいとは言わないけどね。うん。
No, hold up. But if you say then, if you're speaking 名前を読んで, they can't see the kanji, right? Unless you specify the kanji you're using when you're speaking.
まあ、そう、確かにそうだ。うん。Good point.
Yeah. So,
いや、なんて言うんだろう。
and what I'm saying, and to be clear, I'm even giving you the benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm not going to even compare foreign names, you know, how difficult foreign names can translate into Japanese. I'm going to compare the entirety of the English language and names across every culture to just reading Japanese names for Japanese people. And I still think, and we did this test actually, when we just looked up, remember, I think we just had a list of names, like common English names, and we had one for Japanese. For you, name after name, you just read them. First time you've seen them, read them. Pull up the kanji. I think I got 3 out of 10, correct? I think, remember, we pulled up the list of names, and I was going through the readings. I'm like, Ayase, you're like, Ayato. I'm like, Kabura, you're like, Hisashi Bude.
それはさ、違うんだよ。だって、今日本だとさ、そのキラキラネームの、まあ問題っていうか、あるじゃん。ね。既存の漢字だけど、その組み合わせでそうやって読むのかみたいな。ありえないぞ。っていうのが、まあ、
最近。That wasn't the names. Like just normal names, you know, like the Hisa or Kotobuki. You know, writing Kotobuki with the old kanji versus stuff like that. So just for those listening, I think we can conclude that names are not difficult because you're a foreigner learning Japanese. Names are intrinsically, in like a mathematical sense, difficult because of all the options and the fact that you literally, sometimes it's not about knowing, like in terms of like learning, it's about them telling you what their name is, right? Like you could learn everything, but you could still say, they go, nope, my name isn't read that way. Why? Because it's not. I do want to ask you about some other parts of stuff that I have here, which is radicals, you know, like skuri, hen, and all the other pieces. Do you learn that when you're learning kanji? And like, and how much do you actually use that information when you're trying to like infer reading from kanji?
まあ、小学校から漢字やりますと。まあ、なんていうの？英才教育っていうのはまあ、あれね、ちっちゃい頃から親が、まあ、教育熱心で、なんていうんだろう。もう3歳から、なんていうの？ククって言って、1×1 は1、1×2 は2とかね。そういうのを覚えさせる、家庭だったらもうちっちゃい頃、もう本当に3歳から漢字やるかわかんないけど、めっちゃちっちゃい頃から漢字やるかもしれないけど、で、そういう時に使うのが、漢字ドリルって言って、なんか一番上に漢字があるのね。で、その下になんかうっすら、書き順みたいなの、手順が書いてあるの。例えば水だったらこうやって、最初が多分この、なんていうの、縦のストロークなんだよ。で、こう言って、こう、みたいな。で、それが、順序だって、書いてあるのね。で、それを見ながらなぞるってなんて言うんだ
trace.
ん
To trace.
そうそう。
Oh, you mean English or Japanese?
In English. で、まあ、上からなぞって、こうやって書くんだっつって、練習していくのね。でも、書き順はテストはされないのね。けど多分私の考えとしてはなんでその書き順がエグジストしてるのかっていうと、書道とかさ、まあ、硬筆って言って、字をどれだけ綺麗に書けるかみたいなコンテストとかあるじゃん。ね、そういう、まあ、アートなんだけどさ。そういうので、書き順がやっぱり、なんて言うんだろう。字の流れを作ってるから、水だってさ、ここから書いたらさ、 なんていうの、流れるようにあれ書けないんだよ。だからまず最初からこう言って、こうやって、こう。で、次にこう、みたいなね。だから多分流れを作るために書き順は存在してんだと思う。
I mean, in terms of like stroke order, you have to learn in some way. And I think having, even though it's not 100% standardized, I think having some way of doing it just makes it easier to memorize patterns and stuff like that. But I'm actually curious about bushu, the radicals. Do you have to learn the radicals, like the kamuri, tsukuri, hen, and all the other pieces?
まあ一応、その漢字ドリルに変作りっていうので、その下に、これはなんだ、手変だとか、作りは何作りとか、なんか一応書いてあるんだけど、それをテストするっていうのはないね。けど、それをテストする、その、なんていうの、certification みたいなのはある。わかんないけど、その漢字検定的な多分ね。で、まあ、その作りとか変で何が、を知ってて何がいいのかっていうと多分さ、手変を見ればさ、何か手に関することなんだなとかさ、まあ、作りを見て、この作りはこういう読み方だから、その辺が変わっても同じ読み方だなっていうのは、まあ予想できるわけよ。だからその部分で、それらが存在するから、なんか読めなくても読めるみたいなね。予想で。それは結構やることだね。まあ日本人としては。
And you said that obviously you don't have that many thoughts about kanji, but you've mentioned that you hate kokugo. And that you would struggle with kokugo. What do you find difficult about kokugo? Does it have anything to do with kanji, or is that completely unrelated?
私はね、もう小さい頃から、本読め言われてたんだけど、本を読まずに、なんていうの、字がめちゃめちゃでかい解決ぞろりってわかんないと思うんだけど、解決ぞろりっていう、まあ、ちっちゃい子向けの本をもう小学校からずっと読んでて、それしか読んでないみたいな。あと魔法の本とかね。でも字がめちゃめちゃでかいから、内容薄いし、そういう文学チックなものは、なくて、多分そういうのが影響して、一回読んでも理解できないみたいな感じなのね。まあ、そこはマジで反省してんだけど、まあ本は読んだ方がいいよっていう。で、今焦って読もうかなみたいな。でも本当に、漢字のせいで、国語が苦手っていうわけではない気がする。まあもちろん、本読まなかったことで、知ってる漢字は、なんていうのまあボリュームは少ないとは思うけども、漢字が本を読みづらくしているとは思わないかな。難しいな。
And you're familiar with like what Joyo kanji are, right?
うん。
Do you feel like knowing Joyo kanji is sufficient for learning Japanese? I feel for medical school specifically, almost, even like half the kanji seem like they're outside the Joyo kanji. But do you have difficulty reading some of like the old kanji, especially for like body parts and stuff like that? Obviously, a lot of them are Joyo, but I mean, I've read some of the medical reports and stuff like that, and there's plenty of outside only used in medical terminology kanji. Like how much Japanese do you actually think you can read understand if you just know the Joyo kanji?
なんか記憶違いかもしれないけど、そんな別にハードタイムじゃないかった気がするけどね。そんなね、難しい漢字は使ってないと思う。まあたまに使うかもしれないけど、多分、その漢字は、その疾患っていう、まあディジーズね、特有であったり、まあでも皮膚科デーマトロジーはめちゃめちゃ難しい漢字使うのよ。私もそこら辺まだ全然わかんないんだけど。けど他の、まあスペシャルティはそんなに、難しいの使ってなかった気がする。
Do you feel like you know what is in Joyo and not outside Joyo, by the way?
いや、わかんない。マジで。I can't tell which is Joyo 漢字とか outside Joyo 漢字とか。だけど、でも、いや、これに、小学校ぐらいで習うんじゃないみたいなのは予想はできる。なんかもう、要するにさ、ストロークがさ、少なかったりとか、木とかって絶対小学校で習うじゃん。木とか1とかさ。そういうのはまあ、常用漢字だなっていうのはわかるけど、それ以外はそんなわかんない。
Yeah.
別に区別して読んでるわけじゃないし。
Are you familiar with like So I talked about Toyo kanji, like the previous Joyo kanji, like where they had older versions of kanji. How common do you recognize the difference of those? For example, like I used the example of I think I was talking about warao in the main channel video, but there's also plenty of other kanji. I'm trying to think off the top of my head where like I think nozomu has an older version, like a lot of the older versions which are a lot more complicated, more strokes or different. I can't think. Oh, maybe like a koe also. I know koe has like the crazy version. Yeah, koe no katachi no. How common do you think those are, or do you also not know the difference between them because you just see them all the time?
どういうこと？ difference は見ればわかるじゃん。
No. Well, no. I'm talking about in terms of how common do they think. I'm trying to give an idea of people, from your perspective. Do you think that you need to, because there's a lot of people saying, oh, you only have to learn this amount or a small amount to actually be able to read things like that. From my perspective, I think to actually engage with most material, you need to know far more than the Joyo kanji. So I'm basically thinking what your perspective is on this.
なんか、さっき、言ったやつの声の形とかっていうのは、まあ、アニメのタイトルじゃん。なんかそういう、アートとか、まあ、ポエムとか、リテラチャーだと、なんか、なんて言うんだろう。難しめの漢字使う場合もあるね。そっちの方がかっこいいし、なんていうの、アーティスティックだから。だけど、普通に生活する上で、自分が、まあ、メール書いたりとか、手紙書いたり、あと、まあ、論文出したり、エッセイ書いたりっていう時には、普通のノーマルのフォームを使う。だってさ、メールでさ、そんなさ、難しいのを書いて、何こいつ気取ってんのみたいな、なるじゃん。だから別に、だからまず、言いたいのは、ノーマルの形を覚えて、で、もし、次に、ちょっと、難しめのやつにエンカウンターしたら、その時は、これはこう読むんだ、これと同じなんだっていうのを覚えれば別にいいんじゃない？それぐらいでいいと思う。私も全然わかんないし。
Also, on a similar note, do you struggle reading kanji written in different forms? Like with different fonts? Or, for example, like cursive kanji?
Cursive kanji はちょっとね、難しいし、あれだってもうなんかどちらかっていうとさ、なんていうの？漢字が漢字であるために存在してるわけじゃないじゃん。あれはもうなんか、もう美だから。ね。だから、まあ、そこはしょうがない。なんか英語でもさ、cursive あるじゃん。
Do you learn them? Do you learn cursive at all though? Because I checked and I saw, do you know what the kanji shita, you down is in cursive kanji?
知らない。
It's like one circle line, like one circle line, and then one on the bottom. It looks like a circle that you took the sides off of. That's it. And there's like a hole in the center. That's stop. And there's just so many. I saw a big list of like all the soulshoku, or was it not soulshoku?
あとね、
what the word is.
なんかそういう、なんていうの、クーシブのやつって、書いてる人のオリジナリティがさ、もう、多分 80% ぐらいになっちゃってる気がするんだよね。だってさ、まあ、書道家であったりさ、あれ書くじゃん。いや、これこの人しか読めないんだよ。読めないんじゃないって思うもん。
So that's something that surprised me. And a calligrapher like made a comment about this, but I looked into it while I was making the video. There was actually a bunch of different, I mean, although there is like, especially for competitions, calligraphy competitions, a huge originality component, there actually are a lot of standardizations for different types of kanji, and like cursive kanji and a bunch of different, they're like, for calligraphy, there are like 5 forms that I remember when I was looking up. I didn't talk about in the video just because it was a whole thing, but there are like 5 styles of kanji about how you should look and like how many strokes, and some of them are different from like with one version. But okay, you mentioned like kira kira name potentially being an issue. Do you actually feel like it's an issue? And how do you feel about the government making like the name standardization thing where you basically can't have kira kira name anymore?
なんかね、キラキラネーム、なんて言うんだろうね。程度によると思うんだよ。なんかさ、なんていうの？オリジナリティがないとさ、みんななんか平凡なさ、同じ名前の人が多くなっちゃうじゃん。ね、全部。
That sounds like 天国。
いや、でもさ、みんな田中花子とかさ、なんていうの？なんかオリジナリティがなくてさ、ちょっと、 つまんないと思っちゃうんだけど、でも、オリジナリティがありすぎると、なんて言うんだろうね。まあ他人からも呼ばれないし、なんか将来さ、なんていうの、後悔するっていうこともあり得るじゃん。だってさ、なんだっけ、キラキラネームで、光るに宇宙の宙でピカチュウとかさ、ミュウツーとかあったじゃん。それをさ、まあ子供の時は、可愛いねっていうので済むかもしれないんだけど、でも大人になってさ、まあ会社員とかさ、まあ社長とか部長になってさ、
ピカチュウ。
そう。それでさ、うちの、
はじめまして、ピカチュウです。
そう。社長の田中ピカチュウですとかになったらさ、ちょっとやばくないみたいな。これ絶対舐められるじゃん。こいつピカチュウっていうなんか可愛い名前持ってるから、ちょっとなんか騙せそうみたいな。なんかわかんないけど。
I will say though, aside from the goofiness of the name, do you feel like kira kira nemu are fine if Japan stopped using kanji without the reading? Because that's something to talk about. That why do you feel like Japanese for one, let's be clear. When people are speaking, you know, and you're like watching a video, there's always jimaku. There's always jimaku all the time. With some genres, you know, anime for some reason have jimaku, but I feel like there's an understanding that Japanese is hard and you need, you know, you want help so you can understand what you're saying. But for some reason, when it comes to names, people's, you know, namae, as well as myoji a lot of the time, they'll just write the 4 kanji in the name. And they're never, even in newspaper, they won't even write it one time. Like, at the very least, one time, I wish they would write the... So do you think, like, the kira kira namer problem wouldn't be a problem if you didn't have to, what's it called? If like, writing your name was expected, you know, like, on books, you can't just have, like, you know, if they pass some law that if you're going to write your name, like, on the spine, you have to provide a reading or something. You know, because instead of banning kira kira, I'm saying, if you have the choice between banning kira kira name or making like, or mandating that you have to write, you know, if you're going to publish your name, it has to come with your reading. Which one do you think?
Yeah, ちょっと待ってね。なんか。
Because to me, that's the big problem. I mean, Pikachu is a goofy name, but I think you have the right to name your kid Pikachu. My problem is when your name's Pikachu, and I don't know, and I can't read it. I think it's Ko Hikari Nezumi or something.
なんて言うんだろう。私、キラキラネーム、なんて言うんだろう、
ね。or Akinaka or something.
なんか、わかった。多分、ガーバメントもこうしてると思うんだけど、まあ、漢字があります。で、それに対して、まあ、読み方がありますと。で、それに対して、もう決まってる読みを組み合わせる分には、私はいいと思うんだよ。例えばって言われてもあれだけどさ、音読みと訓読み混ぜたり、訓読みと音読み混ぜたりみたいな。
Hold up. But how do you feel about name readings? Because the nanori are a huge reason I hate Japanese names. What do you think about like banning nanori and just use futsu no onyomi to kunyomi?
なんか自己紹介するときにさ、なんとかですっていうときは漢字を使わないじゃん。だからこの人はこういう名前だってわかるけど、例えばね、まあ、名札があってさ、これなんて読むのみたいな時にはちょっと困るけど、いや、難しいな。難しい。
Is it the bunka? Is it the culture? You're going to say our culture?
難しいな。
You have to preserve the... Okay, final take I want from you is Yojijukugo. What are your thoughts on Yojijukugo? I, as you know, just find them annoying. I feel like you're just flexing your Japanese. Even using it now, like it's almost impossible to me, using Yojijukugo, except there's some basic ones like Iseki ni Cho. Fine. But the majority of them, I feel like, are the equivalent of quoting scripture. Like when they say, the passage, what is it? Book of David, Psalm 2, and you're like, but what are you doing in this conversation? We're just having a conversation, and you're acting like you're doing a soliloquy in the middle of it. So, like, what are you thinking about Yojijukugo?
四字熟語はね、難しいな、これも。だって四字熟語何個さ、存在してるかわかんないけどさ、ものによっては、なんかかっこいいく聞こえるやつもあるじゃん。なんか一緒に一回しか、一緒に一回しか会わなくて、貴重な、機会だから、まあ、このモーメントを大切にしようねっていうのが、まあ、一期一会とか、まあ言うじゃん。なんか一期一会だからなんとかかんとかとか言うじゃん。
Also, I hate the spelling of ichigo ichie. It
1に
it has the
木に
I know the weird reading.
そうそう、一期一会って言うんだけど、なんかそういう、なんて言うんだろうね。まあ、かっこよく
Also, Shinda Bansho. So I will say that although I hate Yojijukugo, I at the same time love some Yojijukugo. Shinda Bansho, awesome one.
そう、ものによっては、かっこいいっていうものもあるんだけど、なんか、ものによってはさ、なんでこんな、周りくどく難しい漢字使うのみたいな、あるじゃん。で、なんか、四字熟語が、まあ、いいなって使われてるので、いいなって思うやつは、映画とかさ、その字幕で下出るじゃん。そのスペースを、まあ、セーブできるじゃん、四字熟語使えば。ちょっと、なんていうの、アーティスティックになるから。そういうとこで使ったりとか、まあもちろんまあ、literature でね、本の中で使ってたりすると、かっこいいなってなるけど、普段、ね、会話をしている上でさ、そんな四字熟語ばっかり使ってる人いたら、ちょっとどうしたみたいになるから、まあ、有名どころだけ覚えてればいいんじゃない？うん。
I was thinking, and I wish I knew a little bit more about Korean, because from what I understand, like Korea has a lot of similar grammar to Japanese, and from what I understand, I think it doesn't have that many more sounds in the language than Japanese, but they got rid of kanji, right? So, and I don't think they replaced it with anything, like any sort of logogram or anything like that. So I'm kind of curious to see if Korea could do it, and and I feel like they're phonetically similar to Japanese. I feel like that is a path showing that Japanese could also, if they wanted to. If you know what I'm saying, if there was like, for one, I'm really tempted to want to do a video about kanji band history. When I was looking into it, it actually is extending all the way up until like 2021. There's still a bunch of different movements. And nowadays the focus has shifted from banning them to restricting specifically difficult kanji and readings. So part of the whole like kira kira nemu renaming thing was actually part of a larger like movement from what I could tell that was actually expressing frustration around kira kira nemu. So my people, say, I'm not Japanese, but any of the Japanese people fighting for keeping kanji in its place, my people, I feel like, are you on the hantaiha, or do you support the, what's it called? Do you support the maintaining of kanji? Do you have any thoughts? Yay or nay?
Yeah,
versus I'm saying if there's a war between the anti-kanji Japanese people and the non-anti-kanji Japanese people, which side are you jumping on?
いや別に日本人だからI'm like not anti だけど別に
No, I'm saying 日本人, but I'm saying no. I'm saying a lot of the movements were done by Japanese people. Well, I guess if I'm saying if you don't say anything, then you're the enemy. So,
okay.
But listeners, how do you feel about kanji? Would you support a ban or at least a modification to make kanji work? I wish we could have talked more about how you could like a system without kanji. I feel like if you speak Korean or know Korean, send an email. I'm very curious to know. Like, do you think the Korean to Japanese comparison is similar? And do you feel like Korea lost anything by getting rid of kanji? Let us know. 戻りました。
We are back.
今回、あいみの印象は結構変わったと思うんだけど、なぜ、どうして髪を染めたのかな？
Yeah, how do you say? I changed my color from like balayage. I don't know how to say in English. Balayage? Yeah.
Beige? Balayage? No, I don't know. Balayage.
Balayage って言うんだけど。It's a special term. And yeah, like pretty light balayage to like completely blackish color.
完全黒じゃないと思うんだけど。でも
I mean,
85% くらい。
Yeah. I said like I wanted to make my color to the original color, like my original hair color, but somehow it turned out to be darker than the original color. So I guess that this is the darkest color I've ever had.
で、自分のなんか髪を染めてその性格が変わったと思う。
I feel like
印象が。
I feel like I'm how do you say, like Severus Snape in Harry Potter. Like, kind of dark. Yeah, like, and how do you say, like, 意地悪? Like, mean kind of person. Yeah. But, like, when I had, like, lighter hair, I was like, yeah, happy, positive vibe. Yeah, somehow. But, yeah, right now it's, like, cool, like, cold-blooded, mean kind of thing.
なんか殺意が出たってこと？
So. And yeah, the reason I changed the color was because you know, there are some like stupid rules which are saying you have to be like, you have to have darker hair color so that people won't get like a bad impression of you.
でも今まで何も言われなかったでしょ。
But like when I encounter
その
like
恐怖。
when I encounter people and they ask me, oh, like no one says that your hair is like out みたいな。And I said, oh, no one told me that. And I guess because I'm like this.
医者はね、でも他の友達をなんか毎回会うときは、アウトだねとか言っちゃうでしょ。
そう。And then yesterday, actually, I met friends, and then they said, oh, what, like, so like previous hair was pretty outdoor, and then yeah, they were curious, like if like some people pointed it out, and then I said, no, not at all. But yeah,
で
like
どっちの方が好き？今はまだわからない？
I mean, I don't know. It feels like it's not me because I've never had this dark hair, so I prefer a lighter one. But yeah, I don't know.
名前を変更したら何する？今の髪に合った名前とか。
あやみスネイプ。
I am a snake みたいな。
あやみエヴァディーン。カニスエヴァディーン。カニスエヴァディーンもさ、she had like blackish color, right? So.
いや、でも今の印象はなんか、ちょっと悪意を持ってる気がする。
そう、セブルス・スネープとかさ、メイトリックスに出てくる感じ。
それ全く違うんだけど、まあ、メトリックスに出てくるかもしれないけど、それは主人公と、まあ、完全に悪党とは言えないんだけど、なんかスネープは微妙に。
ねえ、マジで。イーボーだよ。
で、そのなんか今、その鼻ピアス、まあ、偽物だけど、
偽物です。
の髪染めたから、そういう風にしてるってこと。
No, actually, so I wanted to look like a little bit different from others. So if I dye my hair to black, it's like normal, right? Like in Japan, like people have like darker hair, and sometimes they have like lighter hair. But yeah, I don't want to look like typical ordinary like Asian person. So yeah, I wanted to have like something different.
でもやってからこれは私じゃないって感じがしてきたってことだよね。
Yeah. It's not me. But yeah, it will be just for short amount of time, so.
言いたいことがあるんだけど、今まで多分このポッドキャストやってるなんかアメリカに戻ってからそのフルかかっちゃって、今まではフルは治ってきたんだけど、その咳はマジでやばい。今ポッドキャストやってるんだけど、そのほぼ毎日なんか10時間ぐらい咳してることになってるんだけど、そのどうやってこの咳をなんか解決できるかぜひ教えてください、誰かが。なんか薬をたくさんなんか
Just go to a hospital.
いやでもなんかどうしようもないことだと思うんだけど、その咳に関してはなんか他に症状ないからなんかわざわざ病院に行って、アメリカではわざわざ病院に行ってなんかたくさんお金払ってなんかただ咳がある、なんか症状とかあったりしますか？いや特にないですというのは変だと思う。でも同時になんか腹筋が痛いほど咳をしてるから、 めっちゃ困ってるんだけど。
Yeah, I guess you
誰
have
か
to
助
see
け
how it
助けてくれ
goes. Yeah, and if it lasts like for one
Longer than
month or
4 hours?
something.
Viagra.
I mean, yeah, if it's like longer than like 1 month or something, then I guess you have to consult your doctor.
医者としての意見はある？
I don't know. I'm not
まあ、
a
スチューデントドクターだ
doctor.
から。
I'm a
まだまだ。
student. I don't know.
じゃあ1年後に何かあったら聞くね。
Okay.
でもリスナーさんは意見があったらぜひ教えてください。マジで苦しんでるので、いろいろポッドキャストやったり、このなんかメインチャンネルの動画、終わらせたんだけど、それはなんか苦労しながらやってたって感じ。だから、すぐに元気になりたいから、ぜひぜひ教えてください。And we're back with the final section. And if you made to the final section, that means you send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a comment, question, language related, and or otherwise. And this week, we have a comment on, I think, episode 50 of our podcast. And the person commenting basically is like, oh, no, there's no way you guys would respond to something about episode 50. Oh, yes, we will. You comment on any episode. You hearing, I mean, I don't know if you'd be hearing me. It might be a while until you hear this. Sean is the name of the commenter. But when you eventually hear episode 103, you'll know that we did respond to you. Maybe I'll send you a message so you can listen to this episode if you're listening now. But yes, and his comment goes as follows. So this was on the episode Why Gen Z Doesn't Want to Work. So that's the context. And his comment is, I know this video is a year old, but I feel like the reason people say you need to learn the value of a dollar is because as a kid, you have no concept of money, at least for me. Whenever my parents said no to me buying a video game or a new skateboard, I just assumed it was like out of spite or something. And it wasn't until I started mowing lawns and getting paid for it that I realized that people don't have infinite money and each dollar represents time doing something you don't enjoy. But I might have just been dumb or something. Lol. I think we talked about this a little before. I do believe there's some like truth in the idea, that obviously time is money and you obtain money through labor. At least many people do, but not the richest people. That's a whole separate conversation. But at the same time, like, I don't feel like doing borderline slave labor, which is like what a lot of did you do, like when you were a kid, did you do any, what would you call part-time, like sub 18, I don't know, like 12, I don't know how young you can work in America. I think I talked about one of my stories before, but I'll let you go if you have any like experiences doing any.
いや、バイトすることが、私のその中学高校だと禁止されてたのね。なんでかっていうと、なんか結構、教育に熱心な学校だったから、進学校って言うんだけどね、進むに学校で。で、だから、バイトは禁止されてたね。うん。だから、やったことはない。18歳以下で。
Is that normal?
いや、違う。なんか世の中だとさ、普通の学校だと、全然禁止してるところもないし、髪色自由とかなんか結構緩い学校とかも結構あるから、世の中には。だから、そういうとこ行ってる人は、マックでアルバイトしたりとか、スーパーとか、いろんなとこでバイトしたりとか。
I will say that I've noticed, at least in Japan, that the vast majority of people are definitely above 18 when you go into
そうね。
pretty much anywhere.
中学校はね、中学生はダメかもしれない、バイトするの。確か高校生だった気がする。最短で。
Are there any jobs that are common for people who are younger in Japan?
マックとかね、マクドナルドとか、スーパーのレジとか、スーパーであと物出す人とか、コンビニもあんのかな。そうね。なんかそういう系はね、高校生結構いるね。で、逆にいないのは多分、それこそトラック運転手とかだって免許必要だからそれはないし、あとちょっと難しめな、ね、なんかデンティストのアシスタントとかはそれはできないからさ。多分誰でもできるやつは高校生やるんじゃない？
Do you have any opinions on whether kids should be allowed to work? And if so, how young do you think is okay?
難しいよね。その なんていうの、家庭の状況にもよるけどさ、もしさ、まあ、家族が本当にお金に困ってて、自分も助けたいっていう人がいるんだったら、もうそれこそ中学生から始めてもいいと思うし、でも小学生はあんま良くないと思う。なんでかっていうと、なんて言うんだろうね、社会性っていうのがまださ、備わってないじゃん。小学生っていうのは。まださ、自分と周りがどういう関係なのかとか、どうすれば社会となんかうまくやっていけるかっていうのも、なんか、まだまだ完成してないじゃん、小学生だと。だからそれ考えると、まあ小学生はちょっと早いかなっていうのも、って思うのと、まあ、中学、まあ、3年生ぐらいじゃない言って。から、まあ始めてはいいと思う。で、高校生は、もうそれこそさ、自分の、なんていうの将来も見据えてる人もいるし、なんなら高校行かない人もいるからね、中学卒業でもう、それ以降が、学校行かない人は中卒って言うんだけど、中卒で、そのままなんか、収束する人もいるし、だから、まあ高校生は全然やっていいと思う。もうパーフェクトに。アメリカだと何歳からやっていい
I think I'm pretty young. Like I swear when I was like, if I think it's like it's like 16 and you don't need any like I think parental anything. But I think you can do it below even like I think as young as 12, depending on what you're doing and if you have like your like a parental supervision or something. Like I think I told you that I did newspaper sales work when I was a kid with a friend. We're not delivering newspapers. We go to house and solicit and try to get them to sign up for newspapers. At the time, it was very fun because it was just me and a friend, and we were just like goofing off. And for us, like it's so funny when you're like really young, especially like I feel like kids are like evil in some degree, and you from your perspective. Even though, okay, I know you're a kid and people don't treat kids the way the same as an adult, but I will tell you, as a kid, I felt so in control of the situation. I'm like, they're going to think I'm cute. They're going to think I'm young. I know I'm annoying the hell out of them, but I'm going to do it anyways. But and then I remember there was like no soliciting signs, and we were encouraged by the person, our like parent supervisor, to be like, oh, we didn't see it. And it was a whole thing. And, I'm not very proud of it, but I'm just saying, it is what it is. But I think I have my perspective on this is, generally speaking, I don't think that in most situations, unless like a kid isn't getting support, but if a kid isn't getting familial support, I think the government should cover that. And if, I think maybe in certain industries, you'd be able to volunteer work and stuff might be fine. But the reason I think that I'm generally not like pro like children working is twofold. One, the world is depressing enough as it is. There'll be plenty of time to work for a brainless company. But more importantly, if you allow children to work, then you allow businesses to base their business model around child labor. And what ends up happening is, I think this happens a lot in like, fast food joints and stuff like that, is they will be able to say, oh no, this isn't a job intended for adults. This is a job intended for you to understand the value of $1. But what it really ends up happening, like the majority of fast food workers in America are adults. They're full-on adults. A lot of them have kids. And a reason a lot of Americans are fine with this is they blame the people doing the job. And they said, no, those kids are just meant for college students. And this people, and I feel like if you didn't allow, I mean, college students can work, that's fine. But like people younger than that, and generally speaking, if you allow people to get away with paying children for work, you're going to end up with a lot of people who like, they're competing with children literally. And like you have people who can't afford to pay for their children. And like in a business is able to have them as their workers. I'm not saying it's slave labor, but what I'm saying is like, I'm also not like a huge fan. I think like even simple job, like I don't really see the point of having jobs that don't allow you to live off of.
なんか難しいよね。なんかさ、年齢がさ、言ってる分さ、それこそ、より、なんていうの、ハイペイングなさ、なんか仕事ついてもらいたいけどね。でもなんか、今 YouTube で結構なんか見たことあるんだけど、その子供を持ってるお母さんが、そのファストフード掛け持ちで、パートタイムやって、なんか寝る暇もないみたいなのを見ると、なんかそれなんだろうね、なんかかわいそうって思っ ちゃうよね。でもどうす
I
ればい
mean,
い
it's not just that. You also have to see. And I don't know about other people, and I feel like maybe this isn't normal, and people are just fine with it. But I really do not like spending money. Like if there's no other options for food or whatever, it is what it is at the grocery store. But I just feel really bad when I know grocery store. It doesn't matter what business I'm doing, and I go, I know the person who's working behind here is working behind here because of some circumstance that's not maybe directly their fault. Like this isn't what they want to be doing, and they were just forced to do it. And they're not getting a paid wage they can really do anything, and I'm getting a benefit from this basically at their expense. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not a good experience, and I don't want to do that with. I don't want to feel like, hey kid, you're learning the job of your labor. Like give me my sandwich. The interaction feels so bad. Like I feel so much better paying more when I feel like someone's actually getting something. But the problem is with the US, it's so crazy expensive that I literally to pay the amount that would actually help them. Like I can't afford that. So
でもさ、なんか今
it is an interesting.
思ったけどさ、そういう人に対してはやっぱりさ、チップっていうのはさ、いい方向に働いているのか悪い方向に変えてられるか分かんないんだよね。だってさ、頑張れが頑張るほどさ、チップはもらえるわけじゃん。で、それが、よりさ、高収入につながるのか、でもさ、そうするとさ、元々の、ベースラインとなるさ、賃金が低いってことじゃん。そのね。だけどさ、そのチップがなくて、もう、ある一定の、金額を払いますよっていう場合はさ、頑張っても頑張んなくても同じだし、で、その給料が多分、中間ぐらいになるんだろうね、そういう場合だと。それでいいのかっていう、ね。
I mean, you also have to keep in mind that with the tip system in place, the owner, like the restaurant owners, just get away with paying less money, and they also can blame the workers for not being able to get enough money. Well, if you wanted more money, you should have been a better worker, got more tips. And you already know, everybody knows. I think literally the third episode of the podcast. I hate tipping. I hate tipping culture. It's one of the 5 billion reasons I don't eat out in Japan.
That means in the US. だからね、そう。なんかその際お客さんがさ、どれだけさ自分がこうやって尽くしても、そのお客さんの心に響かないかった場合ってさ。払ってもらえないことになっちゃうわけだから、なんかね、チップってなんかめんどくさいね。もう日本住んでていいわ、本当に。
I was watching, like, this was a video that was released by Asian Boss today about the average. Did you get a chance to see, like, the price of living in Japan? Opinions on it? And how most people make around, like, 20万、30万ぐらい? Like for 20代, or for 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, and even in Tokyo. And from their perspective, they're like, not being in interviews consider themselves poor. And more interestingly, obviously, like a lot of people saying, oh, it'd be nice to have a little money. But as somebody, who like been in Japan for quite a long time, and even from your perspective, and obviously the grass is, I really do think Japan's grass is greener, to be clear. Even with like an economic, the economy is not doing as well. You talk about, their old population, and then they themselves say like, oh, it's going to be, could have more money, it could be better. At the same time, when I compare that to America, I have not eaten out once since coming back to America. It is just too expensive. Just flat out. I've not, in Japan, and obviously there's a US dollar yen thing here, but what I would say is the average Japanese person I know, eating out is something that they feel free to do. Maybe not as much as they want to, but it's something that I think most people can do, like literally, like multiple times a week. You know what I'm saying? And just a lot of stuff I feel like is taken for granted. Being able to travel like 2 hours away from where you're home at, doing that in the US is pretty expensive. And some people do it just daily on the regular. And being able to go out, and karaoke or go out to a bar, izakaya, like how many per year?
ミニマリストって、あるじゃん。なんかで見たんだけど、ミニマリストってさ、家の中にキープしたくないから、なんか街全体を自分の家って考えればいいよっていう、そう、なるほどねと思ったんだけど、で、そういう人に対しては、本は買わない、本は図書館で借りてくればいいからとか、あと、食材は買わない。なんでかっていうと、外食いつでもすればいいから。あと、いろいろね、その料理のさ。
You have to have a lot of money to always do 外食。
そう、だから、要するにさ、外食をもう毎回できる環境にあるってことだよね。そういう人がいるってことは。
Well, in Japan, I think you could
So,
live that
in
lifestyle
Japan,
a lot easier than anywhere in the
So in
world.
Japan,
Like I was watching videos on New York, and like I think that like the peak average rent for someone in New York was $5,700 last year.
5,000.
2023 was sometime this year. $5,700 per month. Which
5,000 って
is
どれぐらい
like
だ
how much is
conversion.
that? 80万円ぐらい今 around
80万
800, it's 8,800, right? So
80万だ
8,000, yeah. 80万, yeah.
東
For
京だったら
just 1 month. For
東
rent,
京だったら
家賃。
すごいいいとこ住めるよそれ
That's just an average spot. And I was thinking, like, holy cow, the U.S. is getting absurd. Like, I keep saying this, but like,
yeah.
fellow Americans, how, like, I'm just saying, I don't see myself staying in America. This seems impossible. I don't know how people do it. It literally blows my mind. When I see the average salaries are like 100,000, like, you're poor. You're in the low wage earning bracket. If you earn 114,000, because 115,000 is the borderline in California. I'm like, in none of my friends, I don't know if people listening to this podcast, maybe other Americans are listening here and be like, Joey, what are you talking about? But like, none of my friends are making even close to that much. And so I'm like, how are people doing it? And so what I'm saying, when I was showing the Japanese video, I really thought, I'm like, okay, I'm not saying obviously their economy's great. And like on a general trend, it's not going in a direction, but I really feel like the average living situation in Japan is so much higher. The quality of life, like the amount of stress. And the fact that, the government pays for something, you pay into the system and it actually does something for you. With like just the fact that I feel more safe in like financially in Japan with no insurance. I mean, I have no insurance in general, but the fact that in Japan I feel safe with no insurance, just because I'm like, oh no, even if I hurt myself, that's $50, $60, that's fine. Where in the US, I'm like, right now with this cold, I'm like, no, I'm not going to I don't want to go to the doctor. If I go to the doctor, then they can, even for something like this, I feel like I'm going to get charged hundreds of dollars.
最近私さちょっとなんていうのアズマがあってさ行ったんだよ。そしたらまあセカンドタイムだったからっていうのもあるんだけどいくらだと思う一回今日まあどんな感じで進んでるかっていうのを見てもらうだけだったんだけどいくらだと思う
I don't know. I mean, I have a feeling it's cheap because I've went to before, but like $2,000 maybe?
No, 500円。
500円
But that was just like a checkup だからね。でもそれは
The checkups are so expensive in the US. I think they're like $100 plus.
でも just like, oh, how's it going? つって、oh,
Oh, I'm aware. I'm aware what you're saying. I'm aware what you're saying.
で、
I'm
そ
saying
れ
that.
が、あれよ、not like, so we pay only 70%? Wait. No. あれ、どっちだっけ
That's 70%?
待って、70かな違う。多分70かなあれごめん、違うわ。3割負担か。あれ違う。7割、どっちだっけ忘れちゃったけど。やばい。メルコス。
500 yen is cheap. You don't need any other. To be clear, with the current like yen conversion, that's equivalent of like $3 maybe for a checkup.
ちょっと待ってね。あれどっちだっけ逆にしちゃってるかもしれない。医療費負担はね。何割だっけな。普通の人一般的に。あ、3割かも。
So you get a 30% discount? Or you only have to pay 50%?
70%? あれちょっと待ってね。一般人の医療費は、ちょっと待って、何パーセントだ何パーセント何割
Spends.
何割負担だっけなちょっと待ってね。70歳未満のものは3割だ、3割だから、we get 70% off で、more than75 years old の人は、just 10%。だから、they will cover 90%.
And it's already so cheap to begin with. So like...
そうね、だから...
Yeah, I mean, this was we kind of went on a whole, I don't know if a tangent related thing about the Gen Z doesn't want to work, but Sean, if you're still listening, 50 plus episodes later, still very relevant. And,
ありがとうございます。
Yeah, thank you so much for the comment. That bell means we've reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us. Another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com. We might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Yami.
Signing off.
じゃあね。
Jane. If you're a new listener, let us know. Send an email.